Just when Nick and Cassie come face to face with the Pop family, Nick shoves two of them against the wall and tries to get away. To catch them, Pop boys scream, breaking every fish tank and light bulb in the place. Pop girl predicts where Nick and Cassie will go, allowing Pop boys to catch them in time. To finish off the two, Pop boys scream at them, causing Nick's eardrums to bleed. 10 years earlier, a man rushes to his hotel room along with his son Nick and tells him that one day in the future, a girl will give him a flower, and when that happens, Nick will have to help her, helping everyone with supernatural powers. As the father hugs his son to tell him goodbye, the maid signals a squad of heavily armed men to get in their positions outside Nick's father's room. The father senses the presence of Division, an American government force arresting people with supernatural powers like Nick's father to do some experiments on them and use them as weapons. Being a mover who has the power to move objects with his mind, Nick's father pushes his son out of the room to hide him before a hooded man named Carver shows up and has the squad break in. Nick hears the gunshots before some of the Division agents are slammed against the wall. Carver then walks out, dusts himself off, and tells his men to bring the body of Nick's father to the lab, while Nick cries for his dead father. 10 years later, in the Division lab, Carver has a doctor inject a drug into Kira, a pusher who can manipulate people's thoughts and memories. In a corridor in the lab, a woman drops a ball made of marble, making it roll on the floor. Kira's heart stops beating, but suddenly she snaps awake, kicks the doctor away, steals a syringe, and starts running her way out before the doctor sounds the alarm, shutting all the doors. However, the marble ball keeps rolling and stops the exit door from closing, allowing Kira to open it and escape. In Hong Kong, the adult Nick practices his powers in his hotel room as a mover and starts flipping dice using his mind. He really needs to make some money, so he goes out to bet on a game of rolling dice and, while playing, he tries to cheat using his powers, but fails miserably and loses the game, ending up owing $6,000 to other players who then attack him. Nick runs back to his apartment where he encounters two Division sniffers, Mac and Holden. Their power is to track anyone by touching or sniffing his belongings, just like they tracked Nick using his old toothbrush he left at his father's apartment 10 years ago. After Holden touches a glass, he finds out nobody has used it but Nick, meaning Nick is all alone. When Nick asks why they visited him, Holden tells him they're looking for a girl who has a case belonging to them, and they're here to see if she was with Nick. After the agents leave and take Nick's toothbrush with them in case he runs away, Nick starts packing and grabs his gun, not wanting to be bothered by Division agents again. Just then, Nick gets a phone call from a girl telling him to open up and put his gun down. Nick opens the door, and a young girl barges into the apartment with a new toothbrush for Nick and introduces herself as Cassie, a watcher who can see what will happen in the future. When Nick asks her what she wants, she tells him if he sticks with her, they will have $6 million in cash. She also invites him to lunch. At the restaurant, Cassie tells Nick everything she knows about him, from being a bad mover to the two Division sniffers who visited him and took his toothbrush. She also knows about Nick owing $6,000 to thugs, and she assures him he'll be able to pay it back once they get the $6 million from the girl Division is looking for. Not wanting anything to do with Division, Nick just tells Cassie he's not interested and leaves. Cassie catches up to Nick to tell him she's not lying, but gets disturbed seeing a vision that she and Nick will be attacked shortly by a gang of bleeders who have the power to kill anyone by just screaming. So the two try to escape, but they're stopped by Pop Father, along with his sons, Pop Boys, and daughter, Pop Girl. Pop Father asks Nick about the girl Division is looking for, but Nick tells him he doesn't know her, pushes Pop Father and his son against the wall, and tries to escape with Cassie. The Pop bleeders then scream, causing every piece of glass to break. Eventually, Pop Girl, who's a watcher, sees where Nick and Cassie will go, allowing Pop Boys to catch them. With Nick and Cassie in their hands, Pop Boys scream at them to kill them, and Nick pushes Cassie away so she can escape. Just then, Pop Girl sees a vision of Nick and Cassie with Kira in the future, but then sees Kira getting away when Nick is not with her, so they spare him to kill him later when he leads them to Kira. After the Pop family leaves, a woman shows up to take the injured Nick. On the docks, Kira wakes up to find an old man smoking. After washing her face, she reads a note written on the mirror telling her to go find Nick, as well as something that has the number 4100 on it. Being a watcher, Cassie finds out where Nick is, and after finding him, she takes a flower with her and meets the woman who took him, Teresa. She owes Cassie's mother a favor, so Cassie has her use her powers to heal Nick, causing Nick to have a flashback of his father telling him to help the girl who'll give him the flower. When Nick awakes, Cassie gives him the flower, reminding him of his father's last words, which makes him agree to help her. Cassie then tells him about her mother, who's also a great watcher, and who also helped Kira escape by dropping the ball. Division locked her up because they feared her. That's why Cassie and Nick need to find the girl and the case so they can bring down Division. Meanwhile, Holden and Mac follow Kira and catch her. On the way to the airport, Kira gets inside Mac's head telling him she wants to use a bathroom, so they go to a restaurant where she can do so. Being a pusher, Kira plants a false memory inside Mac's head that he had a brother who was killed by Holden, causing Mac to lose it and kill Holden for someone he never actually killed. Realizing what he did, Mac gets riled up as he looks for Kira to beat her. Just then, Kira ambushes him and tries to get away, but Mac trips her and starts beating her, ruining her bead bracelet before Kira scratches the back of his bald head and knocks him out afterward. Kira then takes the car key from Holden's body and the coffee he bought and drives away. Meanwhile, Nick goes through Cassie's notebook where she draws what she sees in the future and notices the logo of a club he happens to know and a bead, so he has the taxi driver take him there. Elsewhere, Mac tells Carver and his man Victor how he shot Holden after Kira tricked him and then gives him the beads from Kira's bracelets. Carver then fires Mac, but Mac tells him he won't let someone plant false memories inside his head again and that he's willing to bet his life on it. Being a pusher like Kira, Carver tells Mac to stuff the gun inside his mouth and pulled the trigger after planting a false memory inside Mac's head that he unloaded the gun, causing Mac to shoot himself dead. Carver tells his man Victor to give Kira's beads to every sniffer in the city to track her so they can find her and take her back to America. Meanwhile, Nick and Cassie go to a club where they meet the shifter Hook Waters, who can turn the shapes of objects into something else. Nick and Cassie tell him about the bead in Cassie's notebook and ask him to turn any object into a bead. Hook stops a woman passing by, steals her earring, and turns it into money to make sure she won't notice. Hook then turns the earring into a bead, exactly like the beads on Kira's bracelet, and tells Nick to go to a sniffer named Emily, who'll be able to track the girl. Nick and Cassie visit Emily afterward to have her sniff the bead. At first, Emily says no, not wanting anything to do with Division, but after Nick tells her when he finds the girl and the case she has, Division will go down, and they'll be out of Hong Kong, which is exactly what Emily wants. Therefore, Emily agrees to help them and tells them Division has been sending Kira's beads to every sniffer in the city, including her. As she sniffs Kira's bead, she finds out where Kira exactly is and tells them. Trying to get out of Hong Kong, Kira tricks a couple into almost giving her a ride, but seeing Nick coming, she starts shooting at him. Nick immediately recognizes her as his ex-girlfriend and is surprised she's the girl Division is after. When Nick asks Kira about the case, Kira tells him she can't remember, and Nick guesses Kira had her memories wiped to make sure Division won't track her. Cassie interrupts them and tells Nick in private that she, Nick, and her mother will die if they stick with Kira, so they need to ditch her. Nick decides to get a shadow who can keep Kira away from Division sniffers. That's why Nick calls Pinky, who promises to keep Kira away from Division if Nick pays him 10 grand a day, to which Nick says yes. Afterward, the four stay at a hotel before Cassie decides to go out and eat something. She runs into Pop Girl, who tells her she'll die and shows her a picture of a tiger, while her family will kill Nick. Cassie returns drunk, ranting about how they'll all die because of Kira. As Cassie passes out, Nick decides to split up the group. He goes with Cassie, while Pinky takes Kira. After they all sleep, Cassie snaps awake after seeing a vision they'll get attacked by the Pop family, who storm the apartment the next morning only to find it empty. While Kira goes with Pinky to keep her safe, Nick is with Cassie, who tells him Division will kill her mother if they don't find the case Kira took, so Nick decides to kill Carver to make sure that won't happen. To find Carver, Nick calls Emily and has her sniff the bead to find out where Carver is. Eventually, Nick finds Carver having lunch with his man Victor. Being a mover, Nick moves 2 guns in the air and holds them to Carver's and Victor's heads before talking to Carver about why he killed his father 10 years ago. Carver tells Nick he respected his father and that Nick will eventually die along with his friends, according to the Watchers working for him. Carver also adds that Kira will not live long without the necessary injections that only he has, pissing Nick off, whose grip on the two guns gets weaker, allowing Victor, who's too a mover, to control one of Nick's guns and point it back at him. Nick hits Victor with the table and tries to run, but Victor picks up Nick's other gun and starts shooting at him before Nick shoots back. Victor blocks Nick's shots, allowing Carver to get out. The waitress tries to call the cops, but Carver uses his ability and makes her stop doing so, while a shootout starts between Nick and Victor, and the two shoot at each other. Just as the two have a chance to shoot each other in the head, they run out of bullets. Nick tries to get out, but Victor hits his head with a gun and knocks him to the floor before slamming him against the ceiling multiple times. Meanwhile, Carver runs into Cassie and immediately recognizes her as Nick's partner in crime. Cassie fakes being emotional and begs Carver not to hurt her. Carver tells her she'll end up dead along with Nick anyway in the future, and he would love to see that happen, so he goes back inside and tells Victor to spare Nick. Nick and Cassie go back to the hotel where Kira is, who finally remembers what's in the case, a drug that boosts her powers but kills her. Cassie tells Nick she sees herself holding Kira's shoe. Holding it, Cassie finds a key. At that moment, Kira passes out, and Nick takes her to Emily and has her find out what the key unlocks. But Emily can't tell what it unlocks because it's shadowed. She can only tell what direction it's going to be, which narrows it down for Cassie. Nick then tells the group they're all going to die in Cassie's book because Watchers, American and Chinese, are tracking their intentions and movements. So Nick decides to make the future unpredictable by making the group not know what they'll do right before they do it. So he writes small letters to each of them telling them what to do. This way, Watchers won't be able to track their intentions and thoughts, and they won't get the case. Nick has Pinky find whoever wiped Kira's memory so that Nick can wipe his to make sure Watchers won't find out he wrote the letters. He also has Cassie picture the shape of the case and the syringe that has the drug, while Emily figures out what the key unlocks exactly after seeing the number 4100. At the same time, Pop Girl uses her powers as a watcher, figures out Division is looking for the syringe that has the drug, and tells Pop Father that it'll make them stronger than Division once they lay their hands on it. As he starts acting on his plan, Nick gives Kira a letter for her to open when she starts doubting the truth, and has Pinky take her to Carver to make sure she gets the injections that will keep her alive. Nick then gives his letters to Hook, Cassie, and Emily for them to read at the right time. Pinky takes Kira to Carver, who pays Pinky a bag full of cash. After Carver leaves, Pinky then opens Nick's letter, telling Pinky to give him the bag of cash Carver gave him. After meeting up with Nick, Pinky gives him the money and tells him where the memory wiper lives. Nick meets the memory wiper, whose name turns out to be Wo Chiang. He tells Nick that Cassie's mother paid him 12 years ago to wipe Kira's memory when she visits him. Nick pays him afterward to wipe his memory. Wo Chiang then wipes Nick's memory, causing Pop Girl to lose her connection with Nick's future and to lose track of the case. Mad at his daughter, Pop Father slaps her before he storms off. Hook goes to a building with a fake syringe and pretends to be an inspector. Once inside, he opens Nick's letter telling him to open locker 4100 with the key. A woman shows up and holds Hook at gunpoint, but Hook tells her Kira sent him so she won't have to shadow the place anymore. Hook then opens the locker and takes the real case. After Hook brings the case to Emily's place, Cassie takes the fake case to Nick's apartment and plants his guns in there, exactly as Nick told her to do in the letter. Meanwhile, Nick wakes up on the boat and opens a letter he wrote to himself, reminding him to go to his home. Nick goes home only to get attacked by Teresa, who opens the case and takes the syringe. The Pop Boys come in to kill Nick, but are stopped by Teresa, who tells them Nick will die slowly, as Pop Girl wanted. Teresa then gives them the syringe and asks for the money Pop Girl promised her in return. After Pop Boys leave, Teresa asks Nick where Cassie is, but Nick moves the guns Cassie planted earlier, holds them to Teresa's head, and has her heal him. Meanwhile, Pop Boys bring the case to their father, but it turns out the syringe is fake and is filled with soy sauce instead of the drug, pissing off Pop Father and Pop Girl, who then calls Cassie. She knows where the actual drug is and promises to kill her. Cassie tells Nick she's worried about her death since she can't see anything different in the future. Nick assures her that won't happen and tells her to just walk, go somewhere safe, and hide. Nick then gives her a comforting hug and leaves. Cassie then walks into a corridor and reaches a junction of 3 corridors, not knowing Pop Girl is tracking her thought patterns. Cassie spins herself and takes a random corridor, and Pop Girl easily figures out which corridor Cassie took. Cassie then walks to a restaurant and goes to the top floor, where she finds boxes with tiger pictures printed on them. Just then, Pop Girl shows up and holds a gun to Cassie's head. But before she can shoot, Wu Qiang attacks her and wipes her memory, saving Cassie. As Cassie leaves, Wu Qiang tells her her mother will be proud. Nick calls Carver to make a deal. Nick will tell him where the real syringe and Carver will give him Kira in return. Carver says yes, and has Nick come to his hotel room where he meets Kira, who tells him their relationship was a lie and that she's been using him the whole time. Carver played with her thoughts and manipulated her into thinking she was a division agent. Just then, Carver gets a call from Hook, who tells him where the case is if he keeps Kira and Nick. After arriving at the building where the case is, Carver has Victor punch Nick and put him inside the trunk while they get the case from inside. After Kira points to where the case is, Victor breaks locker 4100 and takes out the case. After seeing the syringe, Carver decides to kill Nick. Just then, the lights are turned on, and Carver comes face to face with Popfather and his men who ask for the case. A shootout starts. Victor sends some of Popfather's men flying and throws two of them outside the building, where they land on the trunk of Carver's car, causing it to open, allowing Nick to escape, grab two guns, go inside the building, and join the shootout. 5 men hold Kira at gunpoint, but she controls their heads and has them point their guns at Nick. Just then, Victor pushes Nick down the stairs and sends him flying to the wooden scaffold. A fight starts between them in which Victor dominates Nick, but Nick gets the upper hand and starts beating him. Pop Boy shows up and starts screaming to kill the two, but Victor kills him with a wooden stick. Enraged after seeing his dead son, Popfather starts screaming, killing Victor and almost killing Nick. However, Nick uses his power to make the scaffold fall and crush Popfather, resulting in his death. Meanwhile, Kira kills the rest of the Popfather's men before Carver approaches and tells her how impressed he is with her. Just then, Nick comes and tells Kira that Carver is playing with her thoughts and is lying to her before Carver beats him up and has him almost march off the building. But Nick turns around, takes the syringe, and decides to inject himself. Carver tells him he'll die, and Kira is the only one who survived it. Nick injects himself anyway, collapses, and appears to be dead. After Carver and Kira leave, Cassie shows up and wakes Nick up. It turns out Nick injected himself with soy sauce, not the real drug that Cassie shows him to be hidden in a dumpster outside the building. Nick asks Cassie if she'll trade her mother for the drug, but Cassie says she's working on it. On the plane, while Carver is asleep, Kira finds the letter Nick told her to open when she starts doubting who she is, and she finds an old picture of her and Nick telling her to kill Carver. Kira gets inside Carver's head and makes him stuff the gun inside his mouth and shoot himself.